Hello everyone, it is me, Tsumugi. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm happy to inform you that I'm finally back and starting to make more Tyranid 40k video. Now before we start the videos, let's state the obvious. The elephant in the room was that I had a surgery, as you can see here, so it's believe I believe that's what it calls a thyroid gland removal. Basically, the thyroid gland in my body was so unhealthy and so toxic that the doctor suggested me to have it removed. And remove I did. I followed the surgery, and then after finishing the surgery, I went to attend a 40k local tournament in Taiwan, of course. So now, with that out of the way, that kind of explains why I was absent for the past few weeks. But I'm back now. I'm back for making more 40k video. So today's video is going to be a little bit more dense, I think. It's not gonna be scripted like what most of my video was. It's going to be more like a podcast-ish kind of style. So if you just want to listen for some tactic and just want to paint your models while listening to my voice, then go ahead and tap out. There's nothing significant to show here other than, my face, which is kind of significant. But anyways, there will be some visual aids coming up. There's going to be some text for you guys to follow if you want to, but that's totally optional. You can just listen to what I have to say, because that's going to be the main point of this video. So, the tournament I attend, alright, let's switch the camera back to, back like this. Okay, so let's get started. So, the tournament I attend, okay, was 1,250 point tournament. It's a relatively small one, okay. We played 2018 chapter approved mission. Specifically, we played the Vital Intelligence and the 4 Pillars. And there's also a possibility of playing the Narrow the Search, but since the tournament host decided to let us not to be totally prepared for all 3 missions, so what they did is they said we're gonna play these 3 missions, but in the day of the event, we're gonna randomly decide which 2 you guys are gonna play. So you can't exactly tailor your list based on missions. Well, you sort of can, but not all 3 of them. So we're gonna play 2 rounds. So it's 2 out of 3 of those missions, right? And then, of course, no Lord of War allowed. So no Guilliman, no armor gear, and most certainly no Castle at Night. So this is great, because I think this is actually a huge improvement in small point games, because if you can bring a Castellan in a small point game, then not only the game becomes really dull, and also becomes really, should I say, boring and one-sided. So that was great. That was a great mechanic right there, implemented by our tournament host. And also we used the Swiss system for rating, which I have no idea what it is about, but after googling a little bit, apparently it's the system to use to decide how matchmaking works, which, I probably should spend more time understanding if I want to be a tournament player. But more on that later, alright? So let me introduce the armies that the opponents that I fought against. Now the first opponent I fought was Necron, and the second opponent I fought was the Eldar Dark Eldar Soup. So let me introduce the meta in our store, alright? Even though I didn't actually fought them, but they were still in the tournament, so they may or may not affect the outcome of my result of this tournament. And then just to get you guys know what kind of meta I'm finding myself in, so maybe if it is really similar to one you have in your store, then my advice as a Tyranid player might apply to you. So the first one we have, obviously, was the Imperial Guard with tank commanders, basilisks, infantry squad, mortars, and Vindicare. Now this list is pretty, should I say, cookie cutter? It's pretty cookie cutter. It's like 2 tank commander, one of them being passed, and then you get 3 infantry squads, and then you got 2 basilisks and 2 mortars, and then he called for 2 Vindicare, which, I don't know how exactly he did that, but he did it anyways. So 2 Vindicare, and the whole point of his list was to basically, it's 10 commanders, it's toughness 8, it's 3+ armor. You can't exactly wound it in such a low point game. No one's gonna prepare that many sort of anti-tank gun in such a small point game. So most people are gonna bring anti-infantry, which this guy brought mortars and basilisks to deal with such threat, and also Vindicare to take down the enemy characters. So it's actually pretty good, because our store had a lot of Dark Angel player, which surprisingly did not show up in this tournament at all. We have 0 Dark Angel players in this tournament, because last tournament we had 2 Dark Angels out of 8 players, right? So there is that. And then we have the Necron list. The Necron list is kind of weird, I think. I think it ran a dynasty called Nehalak. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, but it basically is the one that allows you to advance 6 inches without rolling a die. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool for like a fast move of Necron army. They have the basic, the Cryptek, the Overlord, Immortals, and Warriors for troop choices. We got some Raves and 6 Destroyers, and then he went for a Nightbringer, the Catan Shard. So it's kind of like a, okay, it's kind of like a traditional Necron army, not exactly the one that I personally would recommend, because I probably wouldn't bring like Warriors or Raves at all. I'll probably bring more Tomb Blades, but nonetheless, this is what he brought, and we'll talk about how he actually used them to fight just shortly after. Now, the Orc one, I'm sorry, I only wrote like boys and Lutas, and that's because when I wrote this draft, I didn't know what HQ he brought, but later on I asked him, and he said, oh, he got like Weird Boy, War Boss, and Big Mech, so apparently that's what Orc player takes, so I'm not quite sure. So he had the mandatory HQs, obviously, and then he spent rest of his points on just massing boys and the Lutas. He had like, what? Shit, he had like 30 boys? No, much more than that actually. He has like 60 boys or something. He had like shit tons of boys, and then he had like 10 or 20-ish Lutas? I'm not quite sure, but it was a lot, like 10 to 15-ish Lutas. So it's like boys, Lutas, and then mandatory HQ. There was no vehicle, there was no Death Copter, there was nothing. It was just boys and Lutas, which is pretty much similar to what I see from the current meta list. So that, you know, that's pretty much it. And the Orc player won the tournament anyway, so, you know, I guess the end justified the means. So let's move on to the Eldar player. The Eldar player went for Wave Serpent, Wraith Guard, Rangers, and Harlequin. This guy is a bit different because the traditional Eldar list usually consists of, well, I mean, Wraith Guard and Wave Serpent, and then Rangers, and then Farseer, as well as some casters, and maybe a Hemlock Wraith Fighter, or maybe Crimson Hunter, maybe, but most of the time just Hemlock Wraith Fighter, and that's pretty much it of a 1,000-ish point army, right? But this guy decided to bring Harlequin instead. He had like 6-ish, like 5 or 6 model of Harlequin, I'm not quite sure, because I didn't fight him, I just like watch him play against the other Tau players, so I kind of just took a look around, but that's basically what I saw. So that's his army. And then we also have the Death Guard. Now, the Death Guard was pretty special because this is actually the very first few times I saw Death Guard on the table. Well, I mean, I saw Death Guard with Alpha Legion and Thousand Sun Ally in 2000 point, but I have never yet to see like a solo Death Guard player which just only playing Death Guard, like not even Nurgle Demons, just like Death Guard, like pure Death Guard. What he brought, instead of going for like Plague Bearer, which is like the meta now, he went for Plague Burst Crawler and Deathshot Terminator with Black Hauler, and of course Demon Prince. No Batarian because like no Lord of War was allowed, so he brought Demon Prince instead. Demon Prince, Deathshot Terminators, and all the elite stuff, like very super elite stuff that he brought on the table. His army was very small to a point it feels almost custodian-like. Actually, it's like very small counter model. He's like 10 Terminators with like 3 like crawlers-ish thing kind of stuff, and that was about it. And he had like 2 Black Hauler, and that was it. It was like a very small sized army, but each model costs a lot, so I guess that works for him. So later we have the Dark Eldar Soup. Now I was going to call this like an Eldar Soup, but it was more like a Dark Eldar Soup because it had more point on Dark Eldar. This guy brought Archon 3 Ravagers and 2 Razor Wing Jet Fighter, as well as Scourge, and then some Cowbite Warriors, and he brought another Elatok battalion of 2 Farseer Windrunners, and of course 3 squad of 5-man Rangers. Now this setup is very competitive. This guy actually got second. I also got second because like our rating, our matchmaking rating was so high that we ended up fighting each other. But like it was a draw. We draw the game, so neither of us actually get to compete against the Orc guy because like we kind of went for a draw, and that was pretty much it. So the Orc won, and then me and the Dark Eldar Soup player got a tie, so we were both second place. But the truth to be told, to be very honest, I probably end up in the third place if we play another turn, because he was almost going to like completely clear my entire horde. I had like almost nothing left. More on that later though. So anyway, that was the Dark Eldar player. His list is pretty smart. It is pretty smart. All the Ravagers had like the 3 disintegrator cannon, which was really good versus like all my storms and stuff, as well as an Archon to reroll all the hit rolls of a 1. Razorwing Jetfighter did pretty well. He basically just flew into my face and blocked my path, and then start shooting all my monsters creature, my Wraith Lord, I'm sorry, excuse me, Storm Lord, and Flyrant, right? And the Scourge Deep Strike kill all my Termagants, while the Laytalk Rangers just dropped down and took my objective from me. So it's a pretty competitive list that you can already tell. It is a pretty meta list. So yeah, again, more on that later. And finally, we have the Tau player. Now this Tau player is kind of like a new guy, so like his army composition is not as, should I say, cookie cutter meta like. It's a bit strange, because instead of going for like straight XV 104 Riptide, he went for some XV 88 with missile pod, high yield missile pod, and then smart missile system. So he went for that, and then he went for XV 104, have the heavy burst Gatling cannon with fire warriors and XV 8 commander. Yes, that's right, not Cold Star, because taking XV 88 broadside with Riptide already cost a shit tons of points, so he didn't have point for Cold Star, so he went for XV8 Commander instead. And of course one Ethereal, because you have to take another HQ, and a bunch of shield drones. That was like pretty basic. You know, I would personally change the list a little bit. I probably wouldn't take XV88 in such a small point game, but he did anyway because he loved the model, so there's nothing wrong with that. And he actually did pretty well. He actually did pretty well at the end. He actually managed to survive the Death Guard onslaught. He actually managed to went for a tie against, I think he went for a tie against the other Eldar player. I'm not quite sure, but he did pretty well. I'm very proud of him, because yeah, he's a new player and I taught him a few tricks here and there. Hopefully he used it in the game and helped him. That's what I hope. Alright, so that's pretty much the armies that we fought. So let's start. Alright, let's talk about the list I brought. Okay, so the list I brought was 1 Stormlord, 1 Hive Tyrant with wings, Monstrous Rending Claw, and 2 Devourers. And then I got 32 Gene Stealers separated into two squads, and then we got 24 Hormigons, 11 Hormigons, and 2 squad of 14 Termagants. And then finally we have 3 Venanthropes. Now it gives me 8 command point, and it's 1250 on the dots. Now with the general plan of this list, I mean, it's pretty obvious. People who play Kraken probably already know what the list is intended to do. My first plan, of course, is to use the Hive Commander ability to boost my Gene Stealer up to 40 inches. If you don't know how to do that, I have a video to talk about it. I don't want to waste too much time over here, but basically essentially is using the opportunistic events in order to double their events roll, and then use the Hive Commander ability to make them move again in the shooting phase. So you basically move once in the movement phase, and you do it again in the shooting phase, and in these 2 phases you use opportunistic events to double the events roll, and that's how you get the 40-inch movement before charge on 1 squad of Gene Stealers. Now the second plan was to use the other squad of Gene Stealer to intercept the midfield infiltrator and scouts. Say if there was any Dark Angels and he deployed his scout in the midfield, I would use that Gene Stealer to kill the scouts and then cast Overrun. It's a stratagem, or I use a stratagem called Overrun, which allows that Gene Stealer to have a free move. So if there's anything in the midfield, if anyone wants to deploy their stuff anywhere close to my other squad of Gene Stealers, they're gonna get it, I'm gonna kill them, and I'm gonna get the free movement from the Overrun. Alright, that was the second plan. And also the third, the Termagant is just gonna stay at home and camp objective. This is pretty much obvious. That's why I have 2 squads of them, because in the games we play, the 4 pillars and the vital intelligence, the objective marker are pretty much separated away from each other, like at least like 15 inches away. So it was like pretty far. So in order to have both of them at the same time, you probably need like 2 squad of Termagants. So that's what I went for, and it worked pretty well. I mean, it worked pretty well for the first game, not so much on the second game though. But I will still argue that should I not brought the Termagant, I will probably lose my second game as well. Alright, so finally we have the smaller Hormigron squad. The reason why I split the Hormigron squad not so evenly, alright, the reason why I brought 24 and 11 instead of like 18, 17 or 18, 18, it was because I figured that I want to have a squad of Hormigons that's dedicated to assisting the assault of the Genestealer, the forward Genestealer. I want to assist the assault. And the other Hormigon squad, I want them to kind of just like roaming around the battlefield. Like if there's a midfield objective for me to capture, then I'll go for it. If there is a enemy objective that's left alone, let's say the enemy turtle or castle up in the other objective and they just completely given up another objective in their deployment zone and it was just completely empty, then I'll use that smaller Hormigron squad to go capture it. Because using Termingon, first of all, it's kind of slow, right? It is pretty slow. By the time they get there, they probably already lose like 1 or 2 turn worth of victory point. I don't want that to happen, so I brought Hormigron instead. Now Hormigons with Adrenal Glands and the Kraken 3d6 events, it's great, it's awesome, it's fantastic. So they did their job well, and they did, alright? So that was pretty much my general plan before I step into the tournament. Now, this is what I'd expected. Now, let's talk about what actually happened, alright? So, this is the part that I probably have to use some visual aids, alright? So, bear with me here, okay? So, number 1, the choke point assault. What do I mean by choke point assault? Let me just show you real quick. So, this was my deployment in my first game versus the Necron, alright? So, I have basically an entire clusterfuck of stuff just like clamped together. This is just not ideal. This is not how you want to deploy your army. Let me tell you this, okay? Let me just like slip this over here. Okay, this is not how you want to deploy your army. This is like wrong example. You want to spread out a little bit more so you'll have more room for movement, because if you don't, this is what's going to happen, alright? So what happened was the Necron player with the ability to advance 6 inches without rolling a die, he advanced his entire Wraith squad and then used the stratagem, which allows his Wraith to advance and charge in the same turn. Pretty much behave like Genestealers. Now when this happened, I was like, oh fuck, because first of all, as you can see right here, right, my entire army is like stuck in this little choke point here. So he only have to assault my Hormigron squad and Genestealer squad, then he basically control the huge chunk of my army, because those are those units that they cannot move anywhere else. I mean, they cannot advance, they cannot trying to go from somewhere else. They can only stay there, fight, or they can fall back. Now falling back is obviously counterproductive because I want to go forward, right? But I can't go forward. I can't even go to side because I have to fall back. Now this is the part where my second Genestealer squad comes in. If you look to your left, I think, if you look to your left, like right there, right, you can see the other Genestealer squad just like right behind the building. They are not being charged. They are not the same squad as the squad being charged right there. The reason why I brought 2 Genestealer squad is precisely because for a situation like this. Because if one Genestealer squad get tar pitted, in case like this, the other squad can be free. The other squad can be free to do anything he wants. So even if he managed to target my Genestealer in the very first turn, and this was mostly my bad, it was like just horrible deployment, I still managed to use the other squad of Genestealers to move around, and I was able to do this. This was his entire gun line. Like this Tau Tide Wall defense system. I mean, obviously we weren't playing the special rule for the Tau Wall, but we were using it just as a terrain. He had like all the Immortals and Warriors on top of the Tide Wall, and this is what happened after I finished killing his Overlord and his Cryptag. It was just completely brutal. I went so far behind his line. Everything was covered with Warrior and Mortals, by the way, so I couldn't just break through because I don't have fly, right? I was going so fast, with my Genestealers, I actually went around his entire gun line and go from behind, and that's how I ended up there. It's just fucking amazing, like how Genestealer and Stormlord combo just work like a charm. And by the way, we weren't playing on small tables too, we were playing on like regular table, like 6x4. We're playing 6x4 table, so it's like a big table, and I was still able to pull it off. So if it works here, then it should work anywhere, because it's a standard table size. It's not 4x4, it's 6x4, and we're fighting Necron, and I killed all his character, and that was fun, you know. So Okay, let's talk about splitting attacking multi-charge. As you saw in the picture, right? That was the picture taken after I killed his Overlord and his Cryptek, you know. But I made a mistake here, and I wish like I can just tell everyone to like remember this next time when you're trying to assault easy peasy characters, because I had like what 16 Gene Stealers versus 2 characters that has like less than 10 wounds. It was like easy peasy, right? But I made a very dumb mistake. That mistake was pretty simple. Cryptek does not have a vulnerable save, and Cryptek was pretty easy to kill, right? It was just very easy. Overlord, on the other hand, have 4+ a vulnerable save, and it has toughness of a 5. So, ideally speaking, you should split more attack to Overlord and less attack on Cryptek. But when I was in the mid of the game, I didn't really think about that much. You know, I can't just like, well, there's 2 characters, I might as well just split them in half and half. You know, it's like what, 64 attacks. Okay, sure, you get 32, you get 32, done. Easy, simple, right? But that was just me being very lazy, and that was just like a huge mistake, because yes, I did trash his Cryptek, and with like a shit tons of overkill damage that didn't go anywhere. And then when I was trying to kill the Overlord with 32 attack, it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough because he had a vulnerable save, he was toughness 5, I only wound on 5+, yada yada yada. So it was like, okay, you know what, that was a mistake on my end. I shouldn't have done that. I should split more attack to the Overlord and not dump it all like to like Cryptek, you know. That was just mistakes were made, right? But you know, this is the type of thing that I always do. Like, even if I play a game and I win, like, it was a crushing victory. Like, the moment I send my 40 Gene Stealers to that guy's base, it's pretty much game over at that point. Like, there's nothing he could do to come back from that. I mean, sure, he had like 6 Destroyer in Deep Strike, and yes, he did Deep Strike and then trying to shoot at my Swarmlord, but my Swarmlord was lucky enough because he had the Venom Throw -1 to hit, so the Swarmlord survived and nothing big really happened. So that was just kind of like too late for him. The moment I broke his line, went from behind, killed his Overlord and his Cryptek, which denied him the ability of having +1 to the reanimation protocol roll, as well as the My Will Be Done ability. His entire Immortal and Warrior just basically went to shit. That's pretty much how it went down. So that's the encounter, and let's talk about the next part. I think it was the Catalyst and the Shadow in the War. Let's talk about the Catalyst, alright? This was my second game. This was my second game versus the Dark Eldar guy I was talking about. Okay, so we were playing the Vital Intelligence. Alright, we're playing Vital Intelligence, the one that has 5 control points. Alright, so as you can see in the picture, this is how I deploy. So I learned my lesson from my first round of the game. I was like, okay, you know what, this time I learned my lesson, I want to spread my stuff out, right? This is also pretty bad. This is also actually a horrible deployment. Well, not exactly horrible, but it was like, it could be a lot better, you know, like the thing could be a little bit more condensed, and let me tell you why. Let's talk about how I deployed it. Okay, so first of all, you can see in the far back, in the right hand side, you can see all the Termagants with like a V shape. I was like, okay, you know what, you got Scourge, you got Rangers, you want to infiltrate, you want Deep Strike. I'm not gonna let you do that. I'm just gonna V shape it, and then there's no room for you to Deep Strike. Well, which, you know, the idea itself was good, but I wasn't really determined enough to execute the plan thoroughly. I kind of just like went half-assed and I kind of just winged it. I kind of moved like Termagants later on, which was really bad. Alright, never do that, okay? So that was the deployment for the Termagant, and then I have the Gene Stealers in the front. 2 Gene Stealers are, as you can see, obviously they are separated so far apart, because even though I didn't get punished for putting my Gene Stealers so close to each other, but I feel like should I have put my Gene Stealer a little bit closer, then they will both get charged, and I probably wouldn't be able to pull off the 40-inch movement, alright? But that doesn't really matter, because this guy, alright, this guy was fighting against, he deployed all his shit, like, all the way far back. This was his deployment, alright? And he went first, alright? He deployed first, alright? He deployed first, but he chose to go second. And that was pretty smart, because there's no point for him going first, because if he goes first, he basically wastes a turn. He doesn't want to move his stuff towards me for obvious reasons, and he doesn't want to risk losing his stuff, so he just basically put all his stuff all the way far back, alright, and then just park there. So he actually let me win first, and you know what, usually speaking that's a good thing, because if your opponent deploy first and they still give you the opportunity to go first, always take it, alright, always take it. But in this case I did very poorly. I sent my Genestealer squad to his base in an attempt to capture that objective, which the idea itself was great. You know, I want to capture objective and I dare him to come near my Genestealers, but guess what, I just got blasted away. And the reason why it happens because I failed the catalyst. Alright, the catalyst, the one that gives you 5+ feel no pain, I failed the cast, and I wasn't really sure if I wanted to re-roll my psychic power, because I could have just used my the command reroll and then just reroll one die, because I think I got a 1 and a 4, a 1 and a 3 or something like that. So if I reroll the 1, then I probably would be able to get the feel no pain off, but I choose not to because I want to save command point. That was a huge mistake. Like, if you don't have the catalyst cast on Genestealers, they are fucking paper thin. They're so easily to be killed without the catalyst. Like, always remember that. If you're gonna use your Stormlord to kick your Genestealers all the way across the board, like 40 inches, and take all the enemy fire, you need to have the catalyst off. Doesn't matter if you're gonna spend command point to reroll it, you reroll the damn thing. And if you fail that in the second phase, then don't fucking move them again in shooting phase with Stormlord Hive Commander ability. Don't do it. If you fail the catalyst, stay the fuck back, wait for a turn, and then do it next turn. Don't do it because you could. Do it because when you do it, you will succeed, not because you could. Okay, so this is very important. All right, so let me run it down again, right? So the 40-inch trick, right? So the movement, advance, opportunity advance, that's, you know, you kind of have to do it. You just have to do it because there's no reason not to. And then in the psychic phase, you cast the catalyst. Now you want to use everything necessary in order to make sure the catalyst goes off. And if the catalyst doesn't goes off and you've spent your command reroll and it's still like failed cast, then in the shooting phase, don't use the Hive Commander ability, or rather use the Hive Commander ability on Hormigons. Use it on something else. Use it on something that probably have like poor movement speed and that they move, you know. Instead of doing that, I actually went for the Hive Commander on Genestealer anyway, and that was a poor decision I made, and I wish I had not made that decision, because what happened after was all 3 of his Ravagers just basically murdered my entire Genestealer, and he scored first strike. Okay, alright, so let's go back here, alright? Let's go back to the Shadow in the Warp. As you can see, like in the picture, he had 2 Eldar Farseer on bike, alright? It's called Windrunner, but whatever. So he had 2 Farseer on bike, and I had my Flyrans within the proximity of his Farseer, like, all the time, because my Flyron was all the way in the front line, right? And his Farseer was casting abilities left and right, and I keep forgetting to tell him that he has to subtract 1 in his second ability, because I had the Shadow in the Warp, which I forgot. That was like the most basic stuff for turn player, because I keep fighting against Imperial Knights, Imperial Guard, and Ultramarine, which usually don't have psychic power. Well, I mean, Ultramarine does, but, you know, not as important compared to Eldar, right? So in cases like that, I keep forgetting that to tell him that I have the Shadow in the Warp, and that was bad on my part. So do remember, you have the Shadow in the Warp. If you're fighting Eldar, Ultramarine, Chaos Demons, or CSM, Chaos Space Marine in general, or Space Marine in general, alright, anything that has psychic ability, you might want to write it down on the back of your hand. Just remember yourself that, hey, I have Shadow in the Warp, -1 to your psychic test. Just remember that, okay? So, done deal. Now let's move on to the flyer movement block. I think you probably saw the picture already, but let me just show it again, just to refresh the memory. There you go, there's the picture, right? So this is the picture that I want to show to you guys, okay? So the flyer movement block, okay, this actually surprised me. This really surprised me, because back then when people tell me like the Eldar flyer was super annoying, I was like, okay, just shoot it down, right? Fucking shoot it down. But later out, I found out like it's actually not the case, because a flyer, they have a very specific goal. Their goal is not there to kill you. I mean, well, they certainly can with their shooting weapon, but their goal is actually to block your movement. And here's how. Look at the base of the flyer. It's a humongous base, alright? And I cannot move within 1 inch of it. What does that mean? It means my Swarmlord right there, my Genestealers under the bridge, and my Hormiguns cannot move over his model because I cannot be within 1 inch of his unit, right? So this is really, really good versus my entire wave, because if none of his playing came for me like this, if he didn't block my way, my entire swarm would have been able to move forward and then go crush his little tiny weedy gun line. I could have done that, you know, that was the plan. But this guy was an experienced player. He went for the plane trick and he just like fucking parked the thing in my door, at my doorstep, alright? And then there's nothing I could do about it. So yeah, that was pretty bad. That was really bad, pretty bad really, because like I think next time the best way to handle this is to just go around it. But then if I do that, then he kind of already succeeded with his goal, because the whole point is to make me go around it, that my movement are sort of halved. Like my movement is like seriously impaired, and then I couldn't go for the 40 inch again because, like, first of all, I cannot move past that little gap between the building and his base of the plane without touching without touching the 1 inch of his base. So that was the whole point. I have to go around, and going around means less movement speed, and less movement speed means he bought another turn for his gun line. So that was pretty, yeah, that was pretty smart. And I just want to show it to you guys, like this experienced player that did this trick on me. And actually this was the beginning of the end for me, because when I saw this trick, I was like, I spent too much time being so amazed by this. I was like, wow, holy crap, you could do that? I was like, can't we do that as Tyranids? Can we do that as well? But later I thought, you know what, I can't do that as Tyranids because our Hive Chrome and our Harpy does not have supersonic. They don't have the hard to hit or the flyer status, so they can be assaulted by melee troops. But these planes, however, they cannot be assaulted by ground troop without fly keyboard. So the only thing that can really hurt them was my flyer, but I was reluctant to send the flyer forward because I was afraid that he's gonna get shot down. But that was just stupid worry, you know, because I had Chameleon mutation, I had adaptive biology, you know, I should have just gone forward and rip it apart, but I didn't. That was another mistake on my end. And then finally the Dark Talon bomb, I'll talk about that later. It was versus Dark Angel. Basically, you know, Dark Angel has this thing called a Dark Talon. I think it's like a jet fighter thing, but it can drop bomb. So this is how it works, alright? So when it flies over your shit, he can pick one unit he flew over and then roll a d6 for each model you have in that unit, up to 10. So let's say you have like 10 models in that unit or 20 models in that unit, doesn't matter, he get to roll 10 die. Now the 10 dice, he only need to score 4+. On every 4+, you suffer 1 mortal wound, and this is pretty good. Like, you know, the versus like Hormiguns and Termagants, it's kind of like, who the fuck cares? They are so cheap, right? But versus like Genestealers, it is so effective because every mortal wound it costs, it's basically 12 points of Genestealer handed to him on the platter. It's like, and he scored 5. I have 5 Genestealer dead, okay? And that was just the beginning. After he flew over, he still have Hurricane Bolter, and he still had the Rift Cannon. It basically just completely wiped out my Genestealer in like a single turn with just Dark Talon bombing. It was just really crazy, and the best way to deal with this, according to what I read online, was to just like hug the wall. Make sure your Genestealers are hugging the wall if in your deployment. When you deploy, when you're still not sure who goes first and second, let's say you deployed second, or let's say you deploy second, and you probably want to hug your Genestealer to the wall so there's no room for him to fly over and still bomb your Genestealers. Alright, so do that to make sure you don't get bombed, because the bomb was really annoying. And that was pretty much it. That's pretty much what happened when I was still in Taiwan and playing all the games, and that's pretty much it. That's what happened. Now let's talk about what I learned, okay? This is a bit different from what happened. What happened was kind of like describing the problem, describing the stop process, describing like the issue I had. But now let's talk about what I actually learned, okay? So after playing the games here in Taiwan, and I feel like, okay, you know what? Maybe we need to reconsider how many squad of Genestealers I need to bring. Because here's my thought, alright? In my very first game, I got more advantage for having 2 squad of Gene Stealers because one got tar pitted, okay, one got tar pitted, but that could have been easily avoided if I just wrapped another group of Hormigons in front of my Gene Stealers. Then I would have, you know, be able to got away with it without having 2 squad of Gene Stealers. And in my second game, I sent my first Gene Stealer squad forward without any sort of support. That was kind of stupid. If I didn't do that, then I probably don't need second squad of Gene Stealer either, because the second squad of Gene Stealers are really expensive. We're talking about 192. We're talking about 192 points here. It's almost 200 points, and if you bring like 20 Gene Stealers per squad, that's 240 points for you. You know, like, it's really, really expensive. Like 240 points, it's 60 Termagants. 60, not 16. It's 60 Termagants, man. That's how many points that you're dumping to your opponent if you're not careful, because you only have like 20 to, I mean 16 to 20 models for Gene Stealers, and if they cause mortal wound or if they shoot at you with a small arms weapon with high volume of fire, such as, like I said again, Hurricane Bolter, then your Gene Stealers are going to basically be like a free point for your opponents, and then those points could have gotten more wounds, more bodies on the battlefield for you, and you just went for a more easily killed Gene Stealer instead. So I think Gene Stealer, you probably don't need 2 squad. You probably only need 1 squad of 20, a squad of 20 models, instead of like having 2 squad of 16 or 2 squad of 12, or dare I say 2 squad of 20, right? That was just really, really expensive. So that's how I feel. You know what? Next time I'm going to try if I just bring 1 squad of Gene Stealers, maybe things will get better. Because if I only ever have 1 squad of Gene Stealers, my goal is more clear. It's much easier to protect 1 squad Gene Stealer over 2 squads of them. Alright, it's just much easier that way. Now the second thing I learned was the triple layer of swarm. This wasn't really a thing I learned, it was just something I'd observed when I played the game. You know, I kind of just like, when I play the game, I kind of just like let my tactical mind flow and just let the thing do its stuff, and then just kind of do it almost like autopiloting the stuff. But later on I realized I was doing something really strange, okay? So, in the game I play, okay, so the Gene Stealer goes forward, right? Gene Stealer goes forward to the enemy base and go for the objective, go for the kill. That's my first layer. That's the first layer, that's my vanguard. It's something that just happened in first turn, alright? My second layer was my Hormigons, like my 30 Hormigon squad, or 24 Hormigon squad, right? So the 24 Hormigons, they actually go to the midfield because they couldn't benefit from the Hive Commander ability for obvious reasons, because it was used on the Gene Stealers. Now, the second squad of Gene Stealers and the Hormigons obviously could not benefit from it, so they can sort of just like advance a little bit, and then they kind of just stay there in the midfield, not really doing anything. That's kind of my second layer, alright? My second layer is going to be there to capture the midfield objective, alright, in my first turn. And then finally, we have the third layer, is the Termagants. The Termagants who stayed in the back are going to stay in the base most of the time, maybe sitting in cover just to camp the home objective, and shuffle around, move around a little bit based on enemy movement. Let's say if there's something really fast that's coming my way, I'll probably move my Termagants away and hide, or I just move my Termagon to capture the midfield objective after my Hormigon has left the point. For instance, in the second turn when Gene Stealer, like the first squad Gene Stealer, that they are almost dying, which, you know, they should, because if they aren't, then your opponents are doing something horribly wrong. They should be dead by then, you know, but they should cause enough damage to make their point back and break your opponent's line. And the second wave attack is the large blob of Hormigons that just gonna go in, alright? They're not gonna go for the kill, alright? Like I said again and again, Tyranid is not about killing. Alright, I'll say it again, Tyranid is not about killing. Tyranid, it's about surrounding, tar pitting, and denying of shooting. Alright, what you want to do is send 30 Termagants, I'm sorry, excuse me, you want to send 30 Hormigons, and then just charge your enemy. Yes, they're gonna overwatch you, yes, they're gonna do Flamer overwatch, automatically hit, blah blah blah, doesn't matter. You have 30 models, deal with it, alright? You have 30 models, go for it, charge it, surround it, bubble wrap it like you would with all the trash you fought, alright? Just like bubble wrap the whole thing, and then just melee them, and then keep them there. Don't let them run away. Every time you lose a model, pluck the model behind that's really far behind. Keep the one that's in the front alive. you know, because you can do that. It's legal. It's legal. You can just like every time you take damage, just pluck the one that's behind, and slowly move your way towards the very first roll. All right. What you want to do is to completely trap them. That's exactly what I did against the Dark Angel player I fought, because he has the Raven Wing bike, which moves really fast. All right. The mobility is the name of their game. Now what I did was I used my Gene Stealer to charge them in the very first turn, which killed one squad of his bike and went for more bikes in power and in consolidation. Now what he did, obviously he had to retreat. He had to retreat to the left, right? I went for the right flank with Gene Stealers and they retreat to the left. Now what I did was I had my Hormagaunts ready in the left flank to catch them off guard and then just go for the throat. So I basically the right flank I went for Gene Stealers and left flank I went for Hormagaunts. So it's kind of like a how should I say this, flanking attack. So, and there was no point for him to run, because they can go left, they can go right, and they obviously cannot go forward. They cannot go back either, because they have their back against the wall. So it pretty much just like grish, they're done, right? I mean, I didn't like literally kill them like that, but it was just like, it was a slow and painful death for them, because they couldn't really do anything. They have like, yes, they are bikers, you know, they have like what, 2 attack or 1 attack each. They can slowly whack my Hormagaunts away, but not fast enough. It is not fast enough, and I still have Gene Stealer ready to rip them to shred, right? So I'm very happy overall with my frontline Kraken style of play, and that's pretty cool. And that's why I said it's a triple layer of swarms, because by the time your Hormagaunts move forward, your midfield objective becomes empty, and then you probably need someone or something to go capture it. Obviously, Hive Tyrant and Swarmlord are not going to be available to do such a job, because they have to go forward and they have to do all the kind of crazy shit. They have to buff people, they have to debuff people, you know, they have to provide snaps. They don't have time for that. And same thing with Venom Throw. Venom Throw have to sit with Termagants. They can't exactly just go with the front line. I mean, there's no point for Venom Throw to go all the way to the front, because first of all, your frontline units should be in combat, and when they're in combat, -1 to hit on ranged weapon doesn't really matter that much. You want to use your Venom Throw after first turn, obviously. If you go second, you use your Venom Throw to protect your Swarmlord and Hive Tyrant and Gene Stealers, but after they go all out into enemy base, you use your Venom Throw to protect your Termagant instead. So that's what I did, and it worked pretty well. So just remember, alright, just remember that when your midfield objective is empty, you want to move your Termagant upwards, alright? Deploy them in a sense, not deployment, redeploy them in the sense that they can capture 2 objectives at once by having like use them as like a string of line that can connect between one objective to the other. You can have both at the same time, alright? Assuming there's no one there to contest with you, because I mean there shouldn't be any, because assuming your Kraken job has done correctly, assuming you're completely surrounding all your stuff, then you shouldn't probably need to worry about like anything that comes close to contest with your Termagant, right? You shouldn't have to be able to worry about it. So that's pretty much it. And then let's talk about the Hive Fleet choices. Now this is more interesting, because this might be a little bit more controversial. Well, because if you know me, if you know the video I did before, you know I'm a strong advocate for Kraken and Chronos combination, because they just work so well together. You have one in the front, one in the back, everything is fine and dandy, right? But after finishing this tournament, I have change of heart. I don't think Chronos is absolutely mandatory, especially Hive Guard. I really don't think so, right? I mean, in the larger point game, you probably still want them because you can afford them, but in the smaller point game, it is totally not necessary, alright? Maybe even in higher point game, maybe they can be situational, they can be optional. You don't absolutely have to bring them. They are very good for what they do when you're fighting against the right enemy. Say you're fighting against Eldar, you're fighting against Chaos, you're fighting against Psychic heavy army, then having Chronos Battalion wouldn't hurt, because you can always use your Ripper Swarm to deep strike, use stratagem, and fuck up their Psyker. You can always do that, you know. But if you're fighting against Tau, 80 Mag, Impure Guard, Impure Knights, you're fighting against like Necron, they don't have Psychic power, your Chronos ability doesn't work on them, and it's kind of just like it went to the waste, right? So it really depends on what opponent you're fighting. It really does. So in tournament setting, okay, now let's talk about tournament setting, because in tournament setting, you don't know who you're gonna face. You might face a psychic heavy army, you might not face a psychic heavy army, you know, anything can happen. And in cases like that, it's always much safer to go for the route that can deal with both at the same time. So that's why I'm suggesting that instead of taking Chronos as your backfield choices, why not consider Leviathan, alright? Or even better, don't take any backfield stuff, alright? You just make it all Kraken. That will still work. Alright, let me explain myself. Let's go with the Leviathan first. Why Leviathan? Why not Chronos? Because Leviathan has 6+ Funeral Pain save, alright? This is really good on stuff like Termagants, because Termagants, they have 6 up armor save, and even in cover they only have 5+ armor save. They're very easily to be killed. They're super easy, like Hurricane Bolters, enemy fighter, or like they can deep strike a group of like stormtroopers or something. They can just completely wipe you out because their gun is so good, and your Termagants are not gonna stand a chance. All right, they're not gonna stand a chance whatsoever. But if you have Funeral Pain, if you do have Funeral Pain in the back, then it might help you to survive. It will help you to survive. Chronos is not going to help you to survive. It will provide more offensive capability by allowing you to reroll 1 if you stand still, but that's pretty much it. It doesn't offer any sort of defensive capability. Same thing with Yoramagon. Yoramagon does not offer that much, even though it gives you +1 to your cover save, but if you're already in cover, it doesn't stack, and if you're out in the open, it works, but if you advance, it doesn't work. It's just like so many restrictions going on, and it gives you +1 armor. It doesn't do shit, alright? If it stacks with cover, then great, but it doesn't stack with cover. So Yoramagon is kind of, it's really bad, right? But Leviathan, on the other hand, 6+ Funeral Pain, no one can ever take that away from you. I mean, there are some ability that can ignore Funeral Pain, but not a lot, alright? Usually it's just high AP weapon or like Mortal Wound, then you probably want to use the Funeral Pain to get past all the damage that's going to be dealt to you. And that's how I feel about maybe taking Leviathan. It's not a bad idea. And also because if you take Leviathan, you don't have to take Hive Guard. I think most people, when they write turn the list, they walk into a trap of, okay, I have a Kraken, and then what do I need to take next? Okay, I want to take Hive Guard. Okay, so if I take Hive Guard, what do I take? I take a Chronos Battalion. That's the mentality trap. You know, you basically just walk into like an endless loop of Kraken, Hive Guard, Chronos, and then just rinse and repeat. Like, doesn't matter how many lists you write, it will always end up looking somewhat similar, and that's boring. Alright, not only is boring, it's not very practical either. So try this. Try write a list with Leviathan instead. Try write a Leviathan list. You will unlock so many new potential. You can still bring your Hive Guard, you can still bring your Exocrine. They're not gonna be as firepower effective, but they are going to be much more survivable. And also at the same time, you don't have to think about, if I bring Exocrine, can I just bring like maybe Carnifex at the same time? Because it doesn't make any sense, because Chronos give you reroll 1s to hit if you don't move, but Carnifex tends to move around, so do I put them in the same detachment? You know, all those questions just conflict with each other. But if you take Leviathan, everything is solved. Everything is solved. You can have melee, you can have shooty, you can have psychic power, all in Leviathan, and they will all benefit from it with the 6+ Funeral Pain. Alright, so that's my current theory. Alright, that's the first theory. The second theory is maybe just scratch the whole 2 battalion thing. Maybe just go with full Kraken. Alright, I'm sorry, not full battalion. I mean, you can still take 2 battalion, right? But instead of having 2 different fleet, you take just completely Kraken. From up and down, just completely Kraken. And here's the logic. Alright, the reason why you do that is because, first of all, when you write Tyranid lists, the first problem people run into is that the Synapse does not work with different fleet. And the Shrouding buff, the Venomthrope and Melanthrope, the -1 to hit, does not benefit different Hive Fleet. That's the most common problem people run into. So if you have like a Kraken Hive Tyrant, alright, it does not provide Synapse for Chronos Hive Guard. And vice versa. The Chronos Neurothrope does not benefit from the -1 to hit from the Kraken Venomthrope. So they have to be in the same fleet, and otherwise it will not benefit from each other. So the best way to deal with this problem is just to take a single fleet. Take a single Kraken fleet. Kraken's not bad fleet either. Everything moves super fast, alright? And even for your Termagon, having ability to move fast is not bad either, because you get to shuffle around a lot more often, alright? And you also get to advance if you really want to. And more importantly, your Hive Tyrant that's been flying around in the midfield can provide synapse to them as well, which means you do not have to provide a dedicated babysitting Neurosword to sit in the back full time, which saves you 90 points. Alright, it can save you 90 points if you just make it all Kraken, so your Termagons can benefit from the synapse from the Hive Tyrants. Alright, so that's pretty much it. That's my idea about the Hive Fleet choice. Instead of going for like Kraken Chronos or Kraken Yormagon, you know, the good old cookie cutter build, try something new. Try like Kraken Leviathan or just full Kraken. You know, that would be pretty awesome. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And then finally we have the Flyrant and the Monster's Rending Claw and the Tail Attack. Alright, let's talk about this very shortly and then we're gonna end the video here. So why take Monster's Rending Claw? After I play this tournament, I am no longer, alright, I'm no longer an advocate for bringing Quad Devourer. At least when if I only have like one Flyrant, I will never do that. Okay, let me explain myself. When I list Doctor a Tyranid list, like the first thing I see is the first thing I look for is whether people bring Quad Devourer on their Flyrant, because I'm a strong believer that Quad Devourer is the best setup, and the Monster's Rending Claw is only there because it's free. I was wrong, alright? I was so dead wrong. Let me explain. Monster's Rending Claw is the perfect weapon against flyers. They are so good. It's strength 6, AP 3, and D3 damage. And if you roll a 6 to wound, it becomes AP 6 and 3 damage. And you can re-roll every failed wound. It's fucking amazing. And if you combine it with Toxin Sack, which if you roll a 6 on damage, the damage is increased by 1. So instead of doing 3 damage, you'll be doing 4 damage per attack. And that is absolutely brutal, and all for what? 4 points. You get like spent like a Termagon worth of point, and you get the ability to do 1 extra damage in your melee, which is really worth it because you get to reroll all the failed wounds. Alright, so if you only bring one single Hive Tyrant in your list, I strongly recommend you to at least bring 1 Monster's Rending Claw, and then you can still have your 2 Devourer, because that is still a good choice, right? But if you have a Monster's Rending Claw, not only you can do it to fight against enemy flyer, you can also use it against like MEQ or GEQ if you want to, alright? You have the option to go melee. And don't forget, you have the tail attack, alright? You still have a tail swipe attack, which deals D3 damage. I mean, of course, no AP, but that doesn't really matter because every single wound counts. D3 extra hits. Well, I'm sorry, like 1 hit, but D3 extra wounds. Right? So remember to use the tail attack on your flyer. But if you bring like 2 Hive Tyrants, then maybe you don't need to give them both Monster's Rending Claw, even though I would still recommend you to do it. I think Monster's Rending Claw is like the best thing ever. Not only is free, it also makes Flyrants so much more versatile. You know, they can do everything. They can go melee, they can go shooting, they can cast psychic power, they can provide synapse, they can go in the front, they can go in the back. So many ways to play them, but if you take Quad Devourer, there's only one thing for them to do, is to shoot. And unless you're fighting against Imperial Guard, which has tons of GEQ, then your Quad Devourer is probably better. But if you're fighting against, like in general speaking, like general races with like toughness 4 or like Space Marine stat line units, then the Quad Devourer is not gonna do shit. Like really is not going to do shit, because like strength 6, AP nothing, and 1 damage is really bad versus anything that has armor value above 3+, right? So I mean, not armor value, I'm talking about armor save, right? So just remember, take Monster's Rending Claw, it's really good. If you have 2 Hive Tyrants, maybe you can have 1 with the Claw, 1 with Quad Devourer, or you can have both of them with the Monster's Rending Claw. Alright, so that's pretty much it about the video today. In the next video, I'm gonna talk about the new list I'm composing for my upcoming tournament, which you can probably already see what it is. You can feel free to copy it down if you want to, but I want to spend more time to refine it and then to revise it, and then I can finally present to you guys the new list that I'm going to bring in my upcoming tournament. So that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I mean, it's been very long since I made a video, and as you can see, I got a new camera, so my fucking screen no longer looks like 720p. So that's pretty much it. So let me know what you guys want to hear next. And big shout out to the guy who wanted me to do some Tau content. I would love to do so, because I play all the different races. I mean, as you can see from there, all the codexes. I play, let's start from Imperium, alright? I play Ultramarine, Death Watch, Dark Angels, Blood Angels, and Imperial Guard, Imperial Knights, 80 Mech, and I don't play Chaos, unfortunately. I play Tau, I play Necron, I play Tyranids, and I know a little bit about G-Slur Cult, but not so much, so that's pretty much it. If any of those races ring a bell, if you want me to do a content for them, please just leave a comment below and let me know. I will be more than happy to start doing more video other than just Tyranids, because I think I want to see myself as like a more versatile player instead of like a one-trick pony, even though I still love Tyranids. It's still one of my main race, quote unquote. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.